This video will discuss purchase order statuses. Similar to how work orders have statuses that let you filter where in the workflow the work order happens to be, purchase orders have a similar filtering mechanism. A work order might pass through several different statuses before it's finally completed. For instance, I might create a new work order that starts as a draft and then is elevated to assigned. Even here, it might go back and forth between a few different statuses and pass between different people or users before it's finally closed. Purchase orders operate in a similar way. I'll head over to my purchasing tab and create a new purchase order. By default, a new PO will start out as draft. From here, I can either cancel or submit it for approval. You'll find that the cancel option is available at every single stage. So I fill in a few details, and then I'll submit it for approval. At various stages, the system will prompt me for a comment as I move between statuses. As it's waiting for approval, I can either reject it, cancel it, or approve the purchase order. Rejecting it will just send it back to a draft, where it has to be revised and then submitted for approval again. I'll assume this purchase order is good to go and approve it. Comments are optional. When it's approved, this is the final step where you get to review it and make changes before it's finally sent to supplier. Alternatively, when a purchase order is in this stage, you might wait to see if any more purchase requests come in for Grainger before you finally send it. For now, I'll assume everything is good to go and I'll send it off to Grainger. I'll click send, mark the order as sent. In this case, a comment is mandatory. Now that it's on order, we're essentially waiting to hear back from the supplier. We have three options at this point to close the work order. It can be set to fulfilled, not fulfilled, or canceled altogether. Setting the order to fulfilled will mark the order as complete and let me receive my stock items. Setting it to not fulfilled will functionally do the same thing. I can still receive the items, but the order will be marked as not fulfilled. In this way, the PO is flagged as having not been completed correctly. Let's take a look at all the different statuses and how they flow between each other. There are 7 default statuses in CMMS, and to be honest, it's fairly complex how they flow between each other. Starting off from draft, you can either go through approval or send directly to the supplier. Again, at any stage you can cancel, and from canceled you can return it to draft. As I mentioned, these are the default statuses, but it is possible to add your own. Let's say, for instance, we want to add another awaiting approval status. I'll walk you through that example now. To add a new status, I'll head down to Settings, and then Lookup Tables. There's been several new lookup tables made available since purchasing was added. Under Purchase Order Statuses, I see the 7 default ones here. I'll add a new one. Just like with work order statuses, I have to fill in a name and a control. I'll call this one Awaiting Approval by Purchasing Manager. And for the control, I'll set it to Awaiting Approval. Here's where I choose which statuses can follow the Awaiting Approval by Purchasing Manager. Approved is the obvious one, as I also want the ability to send it back to draft. Finally, it's a good idea to make sure I can cancel from this point, so I'll fill in that as well. That's it as far as that status goes, but I also need to make sure I can change it from the existing statuses into Awaiting Approval by Purchasing Manager. So the typical flow is from draft to that. If I open up draft, you can see that it flows from draft to waiting for approval, on order, or canceled. These are the default ones and they're highlighted in yellow. I'm also going to give it the ability to go from draft to awaiting approval by purchasing manager. And I can include a comment if I want. That's pretty much it. If there were more statuses flowing into awaiting approval by purchasing manager, I would add those here as well. Let's see what this looks like. I'll create a new purchase order, which is by default in the draft stage. And now when I submit for approval, I have two options. I can use the regular old status, or I can set it from draft to awaiting approval by purchasing manager. I'll select that one. Comment is optional. It's now under the awaiting approval by purchasing manager status. From here, I have the three options I specified. I can move it to approved, canceled, or back to draft.